tool, and also this concept of enrichment as being one of the resources that you use for your life. So that said, I would like to say that as when it comes to education or learning goes, for myself, like I love it. So I'm constantly learning, constantly reading, constantly researching, just because, I mean, for no other reason, just because of my curiosity. And some of the topics that are really interesting doing those things, or that are driving certain behaviors. You know, how much of my behavior is driven by, uh, sometimes even aggressive behavior, like really proactive behavior. How much of that is actually being driven by fear or by a lack of self confidence and so forth. So constantly in that space. So that one downside on that one is that sometimes you end up like psychoanalyzing yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Like so, like, a lot of doubt can show up sometimes. But anyways, I think it's a really interesting topic for myself. So that's one of the things that I'm always researching and learning. Just started a new book my friend Warren recommended, which is Rethinking Narcissism. So that's been really interesting. And I mean, I just cracked it open, and it's an audio book here. Because of my work with linear labs, I do something now called driving. I didn't know what this is. I kind of forgot about this thing. And so I am now in this 45-minute commute the other day, and I was like, wow, I'm going to try this audible thing again, and which I love. And yeah, it's really interesting. So I was listening to it yesterday.
Yeah, what's the basic premise?
So it was really interesting that so many positive traits and so many positive behaviors can come from narcissism, including supporting other people and building them up and being kind to people and being kind to themselves. So that's all I got in the book so far. But I thought that was really interesting because I always thought of it, it always has such a negative connotation. And in this particular case, it seems like there's also a positive to it. So like anything else, like anything, there's two sides to it, right? And so the positive side seems to be a very, I don't know yet, right? So I'll just tell you a story that I read in the book. And it's a story about this person's mother, the author's mother, who apparently was a super narcissist, and how she went to the baker, and the baker, I think it was a baker restaurant, something like that. And the baker was like, I'm closing down. I can't do this. I'm struggling. I'm having a hard time. And she like just lit him up with how amazing he is and how she couldn't figure out what he's doing and how everybody in the community loves him and just don't give up and all that stuff. And the author says like that bakery stayed in existence for another decade or two, whatever, right?
Right.
And it was because his mother went in and encouraged him. So it's not always just me necessarily, but so that's where I'm getting into the book. So I think that's really cool.
So that book builds on a couple of studies that I read. This would be circa 2010, 2011, and it was talking about how most traits that we attribute to people are not absolutes. Everything flows in degrees, right? And so they were talking about there is a degree of narcissism inherent in every CEO and leader.
Okay.
Specifically because it is the narcissism that says the people that I hire, the projects that I put together, the work that I do reflects on me. So therefore it should be good, and I need to help everybody else be as good as they possibly can so that when we're doing stuff it reflects positively on me, because what I care about is the image that I need to maintain, and so therefore I can't do shoddy work, and I also can't hire crappy people, and if I have people that are not performing, I need to fix them, because if I can't fix them, then I'm also reflective on my abilities as a leader. And so in the right level of balance, it becomes this reflexive loop.
me a favor, can you check on channel 1 right there and see if the receiver is turned on, are all the receivers on?
Channel 1 is.
Yeah, give it one out. Nope, it was not.
Oh, so no one can hear me?
I can hear
Nobody
you.
hear me.
No, I could still hear you. You just were faint, so it was picking you up through that one
Testing,
now.
1,
Yeah.
2. Is it on now?
Yes, I see it now. Awesome. So actually, can you tone down the gain on it? Back it down just a little bit,
Sure.
channel 1. What number is that on right now?
It's 2.
2? Hello, hello? Yeah, because I can see it peaking in the red, but it's better now.
Gotcha. So yeah, that's.
So it's also that conversation around I'm an introvert. Well, not necessarily. Or I'm an extrovert.
Right.
It's not absolute.
Right. There are degrees of introvertness and extrovertness, and it's you finding your own personal balance and understanding that these things do need to be balanced with like something else. So, like I would consider myself to be a relatively narcissistic person, but
you are not a narcissist.
Right. But at the same time, like my balance is self-reflection. So for everything that I care about people perceiving about me, then I also reflect on my actions and if those two things are together. Like, am I doing things that also create the perception that I want people to understand and read from me? And then if I'm doing those two things together, then the next step is to check the results and verify with other people that this is actually happening. Because unbalanced narcissism then says this is how it is, and I care about me, and it doesn't do the balancing with self-reflection. It doesn't check to make sure other people are also receiving the same thing.
Right, and so I would say the different way for myself is I don't even know enough to even comment on it because I've always thought narcissism was considered such a negative trait.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, let's just have a little fun here for a second. Let me see, I'm gonna open this door because I think that helps my neighbor be a little bit better on the light situation for her. And I'm only doing that to make myself look good, so that's a narcissist coming out of me. Dictionary, Let's see, what does a narcissist say in the dictionary? A person who is overly self-involved and often vain and selfish. That is psychoanalysis. A person who suffers from narcissism deriving erotic gratification from admiration of his or her own physical or mental attributes. So that doesn't seem like, I don't see anything in that one being a positive.
Right, because we have defined,
Because according to that definition.
and we've defined most of these things between 1900 and 1940, and at that point, the concept is we're still kind of coming off of the Victorian era of like virtuous traits, and so everything was very absolute, very black and white. That's one of the reasons why Freud's whole entire like theory of sexuality and how it impacts people is like you either are or are not something. Like you either want to sleep with your mother or you don't want to sleep with your mother, but basically you only have these two switches.
That's right.
Right. And so
Isn't it interesting how, as complex as the world is, we end up getting into those white-black conversations?
right, because it's easy for
They're so
us.
binary.
It's easy for us as humans to
Something is safe
shortcut.
or dangerous.
Yeah.
It is poisonous or it is not poisonous.
And that's how we're wired from, like, you know, whenever you believe that we were created or evolved or whatever it is,
6,000
it's
years ago with the
basically
dinosaurs.
how fast can I make this decision and get it generally right most of the time. So if red is mostly poisonous, just avoid the red things, don't eat them.
Better safe than sorry. Better
Yeah.
safe than in crippling agony, you know, barfing to
Right,
death in
right.
your cave.
So in a lot of cases, you see a narcissist, it's very hard to tell if it's a narcissist in balance or narcissist not in balance, and if it's not in balance, that's going to be relatively detrimental. So most people just avoid that trait in general.
Totally true. And so for me right now, I don't know enough.
Well, you're reading the book.
Because
so,
I'm just starting to read the book, but I think it's really interesting. So all that was like this big conversation around, you know, furthering education or enrichment, and you know, for me that's important because that's going to be a defining trait of my interactions with. I mean, primarily what I do is interact with other people. Ultimately, you know, even if it's by email or the work we do on the computer that gets to, you know, this live show is always interacting with other people. So I'm always interested in how can I interact with other people better, and how can I be a better partner in a conversation or an engagement. So always learning and checking things out, and I think that the fact that school being over, there's a difference in my opinion between going to school and learning, and I don't think they're 100% synonymous. That doesn't mean you can't learn in school, but that doesn't mean you have to have a school to learn. And so with that said, lifelong learning is so important. And I've heard the statistic, and whatever the number is, it's the point that matters, is that, you know, of the real successful CEOs, the average read is like 60 books a year.
Yeah.
So they're constantly looking to consume new information and then apply that information to their business and their life. And I think that's indicative of, like, look at the success. In their case, a financial return is obvious, and that's really important for a lot of individuals. But it's not just financial, because they're enriching themselves and all the entrepreneurs talk ultimately about how it's about their team. So I think that's right. Like, they're becoming better people most likely, or they're at least trying to, and they're working on it. And going to the coaching thing, which we talked about yesterday, you know.
And a lot of it is the like the job of the CEOs that most people know, because they are the 1% of CEOs. They're the high level ones.
Right.
A lot of their job is managing a lot of the perception around the brand, and also looking for, because the percentage level of improvement that you can make when you are like the Facebook CEO is a much smaller percentage than you can make if you're the CEO of a nothing company. So if you're a CEO of like a 100-person company that's like, done the first $50 million in revenue, you can make the jump, like making the jump to 500 million, that's like a 5-6 years worth of work, and you're going to be really in the trenches. When it's Facebook and the whole entire model is for the most part set,
right,
and everyone kind of knows, and you're just saying, okay, we need to meet analyst expectations, when you deal with privacy issues and something else, like you're making a 1% change over the course of pretty much an entire year. And so the extra study is like, okay, what's that one thing that I can figure out that might possibly make that 1% change? And that is your job. If you're not doing that, like, and you see this with
so true.
So podcasts, Masters of Scale,
okay,
by Reid Hoffman.
Yep.
Founded LinkedIn, PayPal. Was
He's a big investor now in, what's it called? Greylock, right? Yeah.
Right. So he interviewed Reid Hoffman he interviewed
that's what I want to do. I want to interview myself.
the other Reid from Netflix.
Okay.
And
Hastings, right? Or
Hastings,
or something like that. Okay.
so he interviewed Reid Hastings, and Hastings said his first company, which he sold for $700 million, basically failed because he, as a CEO, kept working as opposed to learning and managing. So every single time they had a problem, he would go back and try to redesign the product and work hard on the product. And he was like basically product owner, CEO, like lead developer, like all of these things, because for him, it wasn't a people process thing. He was like, this is just a work thing. I need to work harder. He was like, and that basically ruined the company, even though they sold it, because they sold it like as an escape move.
Wow. Yes. They just couldn't get it. They couldn't get it out from underneath the churn of it.
No, he was just tired of it. And the market was taking a downturn. It was .com.
Wow.
It was
What was the previous company?
It was some software development company. It was like just a custom software dev company.
Wow.
But it was definitely one of those things where he was like, he got tired. Everything happened at the same time. Like he got tired. The market, took a downturn. There was an offer to sell. He went with it. And then it was all of those lessons, which then he brought to Netflix when they started to change. So it was more culture based of like, here's a culture of how we work and learn, as opposed to I'm just going to get more in the trenches and everyone else should just burn 1,000%.
Very interesting. Yeah, I've learned a lot even in this short time working with Brad at Linear Labs, from the way they do it. And obviously, it's a super awesome startup and well funded,
Right.
and he's definitely bringing in talent and getting them. What do you need?
Right.
A lot of trust. It's really, really awesome seeing that happen. So, what are the things that you're studying right now? E-Train.
Mastermind, Mind Master, whatever that thing is called. Mastermind.
You're studying masterminds? Interesting. What have you learned?
Haven't gotten
This was a
that
new
far.
concept to you, I think, on Saturday morning. You're like,
It
Master
is.
what?
I will be writing an ebook about it, so we'll see what happens with that.
Oh, you are?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. Here we go. He's going to start off with, okay, y'all.
Here's the thing.
Here's the thing. So what have you learned?
Firstably,
So what have you learned in Mastermind so far?
I'm really just kind of, at this point, literally as of yesterday, started studying it, so I have not made any significant progress, in my opinion. But I need to understand it so that I can develop one
Okay.
for our team.
Here's a better question. For the preliminary research, what is your general definition of masterminds? Because I always think that for someone that's like, okay, I'm learning this concept, it's good to hear that, because that's probably a little bit more raw, and like that's the 30-second version.
Thank you.
if
Good question.
you already know.
It is in my interpretation so far, a more structured happy hour mixer for anyone in whatever specific industry or business group or life area to meet with other people and talk through things and chat with experts and things like that.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to develop, at least.
I would go with that. I would say that is the premise and the goal of most masterminds. As the divorce from the people leading them, as just like the structure of what it is, the activity. And then I would say most masterminds that aren't focused on technical pieces tend to just be pass-through networking. If that makes sense. So, have you ever read any like 1760s, 1780s like Emily Dickinson type novels? So like stuff.
I don't know if you know this, but I went to engineering school. We don't do that.
Okay.
At all.
Well, those are the things that you should pick up as someone becoming a better CEO.
I'm just joking. I would love to. I have a whole list. I think I found someone was like 100 books you should read, right? And they're full of those kind of books, and I would love to be able to do that.
But like you've seen like the TV shows about that era.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah. So essentially, the way that the networking for the moneyed class of England, the minor lords and ladies, and then like the people that just had cash,
The merchants.
they would host dinner parties. And so their dinner parties were the way that they were to set up connections and business and family and
Salons
marriages
or
and
whatever
everything else.
you'd hear in
And
the
so
books.
you were either invited to the grand version, which is someone in the neighborhood, host everybody at their house,
Can't wait there now.
and they all hang out.
Sure.
Or you get invited to specific dinner parties, which is, I know these 15 people, and I want all of you guys to come because this is a more important thing than just the, oh my God, everyone shows up and please, see my house and my new servants and everything else. So masterminds kind of grow out of that, where people are like, okay, I hold influence. I can connect more important people to people that are trying to be important. So the mastermind is the gateway.
The mastermind is the gateway.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. It did take him like an hour to explain that one sentence he said.
That's because you have to give context and color.
He literally
I
just put
feel
an
like
equation
that's
out there.
slightly
Mastermind equal I times J to the limit function of 0 to billionaire.
Because that's totally
Like,
more
what,
clear
Steven?
of a way to.
What happened? What did you say? No, I think it's amazing that, so here's the thing. I think for people that are really naturally good at connecting, we take it for granted that it's easy to go and connect,
Mm-hmm.
right? And,
Well, actually, I wouldn't say that.
okay,
No, actually, no. Keep going. I understand. For you, the qualifier was for people that are naturally good at connecting.
yes, sir. And
I'm not one of those people.
So what happens is that if you're really naturally good at connecting, it's really easy for you to do this on your own. But there's a whole slew of amazing people that lack that, like you just said, like I'm not one of them, right? And so the connector person bringing the people together is in and of itself a valuable activity.
Right.
And the goal when they get there is, in as a connector, if you're good about how you connect the people and how you invite them to the room and how you bring them together, then you can bring value to everybody who's there.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons for masterminds. So one of them is to say, in the case, if I was to bring Steven into a mastermind, I'm just gonna take a stab at this. I would bring Steven into a mastermind of two different types. One would be other tech people in your space that are not doing the same thing, but yet they're tangential enough that you'd be, I'm really interested in your take on what I'm doing because you know so much, but you're not in my space. So you could give a really good perspective.
Right.
Connect me with some good resources because we're probably all playing in the same big pool.
Mm.
And the other one is it's unrelated. So it's like, okay, Steven is the tech, blockchain, data scientist type. It'd be really probably great that if he met with founders of companies that are because then what you're probably trying to sell. So you're looking for companies north of, I don't know, $15, $20 million in total sales. They can afford, $1 or $2 million projects
Right.
that are in the space that would be needing that kind of thing at some level.
Right. So that's
So probably wouldn't bring you with a a woman who owns a really awesome, let me think, I don't know, some kind of widget supply company that's kind of commodity based, unless they're looking to do supply chain stuff. Because there's not a lot you could do other than network with that person. You're not actually masterminding with that person. You're not actually sitting around going like, I have this issue. What do you guys think? Because this right. So that's also back to the event that we used to, how we met each other.
Yeah.
Well, that event was really, really awesome.
With House of Genius.
House of Genius. So that event was a few startups, I think 2 to 3, and there were post-launch revenue creating startups. They would come and pitch the room of about, I think it was 10 or so.
Yeah.
Somewhere about 10, 12 geniuses. And the cool part about it is nobody knew anything about each other than your first name. And so you would be talking to the person, and then the person would get up and go and present in front of the room. It's like, oh my God, I didn't know that, right? Or at the end, you're sitting here, and beside you would be a trademark attorney or a doctor, whatever, right? So that was really, really awesome. And those were really so useful because there was a focused discussion about the problem that the company had.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that's almost a mini mastermind in a sense.
Yeah, it was definitely,
There's one aspect of a mastermind.
Right. It was the focus group piece.
Mm-hmm.
of
Which people like a lot.
Yeah.
I heard some feedback from Jason Troy when he went to some masterminds. And one thing he didn't like was the fact that sometimes the masterminds are so sold on, we're going to help you get here, we're going to help you get here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they almost are assigning you homework assignments, right? Like, did you get that list of things that we talked about in the last session? And they would almost make you feel bad for not doing it. And what his comment was is like, I already have a lot of pressure in my life. Like, I already have things that I'm working on, I'm moving on, making things happen. So what I really was so interested in was connecting with people and interacting with people that I'm not actually interacting with them on a normal basis at all. So that's what I was really there for. And then they just made it about like homework assignments in a sense. So I think that's a really interesting viewpoint because it's for us as we go to develop some kind of platform like that. We have to balance, like if you want the tactical, awesome, we'll deliver it in these areas. And if you want to just have an opportunity to meet some awesome people that we've spent the time and money to really get to and figure out and learn and realize that they're amazing to network with, and you get that too.
So
I
what
think
you're
you make
saying
it
is,
a 70-30.
yeah. So what you're saying is we need to have Jason come on the show and talk through the positive.
Yes,
negatives,
absolutely.
and
That'd be
negatives.
awesome.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. So that's something that I definitely think we should be working on. So Ms. Jannica, the whole conversation here is around, well, it's around like after school, like how do we learn? And so we just kind of went all over the place.
We got
We got a mastermind.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course, that's what we do here. But the reason we started talking about masterminds is specifically Emily's starting to research that. I had started to talk about, I just started to read a book called Rethinking Narcissism. I really want to understand you and get a better feel for who you are. So I just really got into that
Oh,
book.
that's funny.
So anyways, just kind of going around like, what do you think about education and learning and blah, 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 especially now that school's done. And what happens to education for Grant, for example, who is an actual great, like actually goes to a school and
Goes
doesn't
to a
go
real life brick and mortar school.
like a traditional school versus,
So what happens to him? Do you
Well,
mean, does he stop learning now
does
that
he
he's
stop
on
learning?
summer
How
break?
would you help him learn? Blah, blah, blah.
Well,
It's ninth grade, right?
That's exactly like the question I
Or
was
eighth
going to
grade.
ask.
well, he finished 8th grade.
Please ask the question.
Well, that was it. So,
Oh.
kind of our prompt for people listening was, if school's out, do you just stop learning?
No, okay,
Exactly.
so I can answer this from what I told them when they were little, like, and what I've told them all the time, especially once we were homeschooling. Every day is school. Every day is learning. There is no summer break, spring break, a day of school. You learn wherever you're at. You can choose to go to school and not learn a thing.
That's what we talked about, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just another day. It's just a different way of learning.
So what are you learning about right now?
What am I not learning about? Okay, so the key things.
You might want to learn about this narcissism. Might help you.
Yes, there's lots of people in my
Okay.
life. who
I feel like you shouldn't learn more about it, or your tribe's gonna get real small.
I tend to attract them.
Steven.
Because you're very empathetic in that.
It's that empath, narcissist,
It's
magnetic, yeah.
you
whatever.
want to give and they want to take. An endless loop
That's
of
literally
dysfunction.
exactly that is indicative of not having the balance.
Yeah.
See how they're unbalanced, how unbalanced they are?
We were talking about narcissistic traits and what they are balanced by, and narcissistic traits in balance means that people tend to
Did you turn your mic on?
Yeah, it's on.
Can you check on this side? We have a thing that the mic's low, so you just maybe crank up the gain on hers.
For which one? Which channel?
She's on channel 3, I think. Or
That thing was off, so it should be.
Oh.
Jannica, talk, please. Test it.
Hello?
Oh, you know,
3, 4.
No, I think it needs a little gain on it. All right, do it again.
Me? One,
Yeah, there you
two,
go.
three.
Too high. Sorry, guys. Thank you for the feedback. Learning more, whoever that is, thank you so much.
What was it? So basically the idea that narcissism, if balanced with self-reflection and then checking with other people that what you want to reflect on yourself is what you're actually putting out into the world, that is a positive trait and it exists in most good CEOs, right?
Yes.
It being out of balance means that you're just like all about you and like then you become the black hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
F everybody, it's my body, I do what I want. If you don't like me, that's your problem.
Well, that really is their problem if they don't like you. So, I mean,
No, it's
that's not a
their problem.
narcissistic trait. Yeah, it is. I can choose not to like you or like you. That has nothing to do with whether you're a good person or a bad person or
But
a
if you
narcissism or
don't
an
like
empath.
me because I come in and I'm rude to everybody, then I need to think
Yeah.
about myself.
Right.
A lot of that's a lot of things that happens. Like, well, if they don't like you, they go, well, hold on.
Self-reflection.
Self-reflection,
You
be
go and check a
self-aware.
bunch of things. Say, okay,
Yes.
make sure I'm not doing any of these. All right, that person just doesn't like me.
And
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful, and that's what I was hoping to say. So
That's
thank
why it
you.
takes me so long to say things because you got to explain all of it.
You did a good job. She's done an amazing job.
Mm-hmm.
Because I explained old school masterminds through Victorian dinner parties, and it was 5 or 6 minutes, and Abe was like, "So masterminds are like gateways to access." And I was like, "Yeah."
No,
So-
no, hold on. You did a great job there.
Yeah, I know.
It's the first where you're like, masterminds are like the tactical deliverance at the gateway, and you're like, what? And then he went through a 5-minute explanation of what he meant, and then we understood.
Right.
So don't go the other way. That's not what happened.
In journalism, it's called setting up the lead, and then
And
going
burying
into
the
going
lead.
into the explanation, and then finishing with the summary.
But what you like to do is start with the lead and then leave on a high note and just walk off. And everybody's like, he's an enigma. Like, what happened there?
Oh yeah, that's.
We are not smart enough to keep up with
It's 'cause
him,
I
so
don't
we
want-
won't ask him a question. Because we don't want to bother him. He's very, very busy. He walks really, really fast. We don't. No, don't drop bullshit with me. I know that. I know that technique.
Do you want me to answer the question?
Yeah. Sorry, we're back. To you. Thank you so much.
I'm learning. What am I learning?
Yes, ma'am. What are like the few things you really want to share about what you're learning?
Human design and gene keys. Learning about that. I am learning about what we were just talking about. Like, what is my business? What is your business? And what is like God's business? And not getting involved in that. And so that is even to the point of not giving a fuck what other people think about me. And I can have an impact on someone. I can be a powerful, strong voice, and one person takes it the wrong way, and they don't like me, and they see me as whatever. And then another person will be like, I needed to hear it that way. So you cannot control what other people are going to perceive about you or think about you. And yes, you have to be, you don't have to be, but
We should
be considerate and kind of other people's feelings and the situation and be appropriate with that. But again, that's subjective too. Like to one nationality versus another, to a female versus a male, to a kid, there's so much that goes into it. And I think on one hand, narcissists, they're a much needed, I don't know how to put it. They have a lot of value to add.
They have a role to play.
They have a role to
Now,
play
why
for
would
sure.
you say that? Because I pulled it up on the dictionary, and it doesn't sound like any positive. It's like saying, VX gas has a positive trait. Like, there's
Okay.
nothing in there that I saw in the dictionary definition. So what do you perceive it to be?
Okay, well,
And
I'm
we're
not
about to
necessarily.
go off topic again, but
Well, I'm not saying that.
Quick, update the title.
no, sorry. Let's say.
So, which definition did you read? A person who has an excessive interest or in admiration of themselves, or did
Yeah,
you read
something
like the
like
one
that.
that talks about their traits?
No, I think it was just that one.
Okay,
But
well,
you know
when you
what?
look at their traits, I would say that those people are here to push other people to find out who they are and where they stand. They bring in that struggle, they bring in that conflict, they bring in that.
I thought we didn't like any of those words.
We
based on
don't.
yesterday.
I don't like
Said
them,
we.
but
The royal we.
Oh, yeah, the royal we.
I don't like them.
The redefining dictionary.
But I'm just saying
woman.
that there's a role for them, and you know, I know lots of narcissists, and I really do enjoy interacting with them, especially when I know, which is pretty upfront at the beginning, that they're narcissists. So then I know where my role is with them, and I know how to play the game.
So interesting. So this is a whole nother topic that I would love us to have a conversation about, which is around, you know, what somebody inherently is and what they can evolve to.
Yeah, I think we can all evolve out
So-
of that or into something else.
So should everybody have, so I guess the topic would be something like this, Emily, or as we would get into that particular topic. Should everybody have a piece of narcissism in them or trait? And so those that are too high, going back to what Steven said, some who exhibit too much of it, should they not be looking to eliminate it, but to dial it down? And those that don't have it, should we look to learn how to incorporate some? And then same thing with empathy, and same thing with compassion, and same thing, so all these different traits.
No.
So
So that's another conversation.
should, you use
I'm
this
proposing.
word should, nothing should be.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
want to
that-
be whatever you
That's
guys.
why I was
No.
saying no.
Well, that's why
But-
that's,
But also the reason why, so the reason I say no is not because those are not good activities to do, right? So having more empathy, dialing back narcissism, keeping things in balance, those are all great. But when ascribing that to everyone, then that misses the gap of who is that person. This is the thing that parents sometimes do with children, where they're
Yeah.
like, well, okay, all children need to learn X. So that means that my children need to go through this program so they can hit this level of achievement. And it's like, but do you know anything about what your child, what actually makes up that child? Are
Right.
they
okay.
creative?
Well, I was specifically
sure.
speaking from a personal perspective.
I know. So that's the reason why we were putting qualifiers in place, so that now we
If
can
only
have
we
the
weren't talking
conversation.
about narcissism and putting everything in the context of oneself.
That's the only person that I should care about.
So if you're identifying as
Abraham Hicks, 100% all day. Like, you should be selfish. You should be working on bringing joy to yourself. And thus, when you bring joy to yourself in your life, you can bring joy to other people. Why would I live my life to create joy for other people while I suffer?
there are some
It's a
people.
I
very
think it's
interesting
that
thing.
very last statement of,
Mhm.
and for other people, that is what keeps it from being narcissistic. But the whole first part, phrased in that way.
I mean,
definitely
I know
is.
a lot of people that their entire life mission is to serve others, and they're some of the most narcissistic, unbalanced
Yes.
people that I know.
This is
They
so interesting.
want praise, like
We're
they're
totally
in
gonna
it
have this
for the
conversation.
praise.
But so here's the thing: is this going to be like a book club here? Because I think we should all read the book called "Rethinking Narcissism." Because unless you guys have read it or read something very, very similar,
I've read
I
a
think
lot about
everybody
them.
is coming up from I don't know, but Jannica, she's
I mean,
an expert in
I've
narcissism.
definitely, so I read the preliminary studies that kind of informed where that book is coming from. Reading that book would definitely be interesting. Like,
Oh, I think I've read it.
but it's definitely like, so everyone has specific roles to play, and the role that is best suited for you is not the role that's suited for everyone else. So it's hard to say what people should and should not be doing.
Yeah, and again, I was just
Yeah.
only referencing myself.
Oh yeah. So in that case,
I don't want you to come and tell me I should do something versus like I have a suggestion for you, and then I think to myself, well, I'm always trying to be better. And if there's this thing called empathy that I never knew about, I would love to go learn about it and figure out how to incorporate it. Or
Yeah.
maybe you're so empathetic you can't even move because you're just feeling everybody all day long,
So then
and so
you
you
dial it back.
maybe figure out how to like Jannica said, what's mine to worry about and what's somebody else's to
Right.
Just always thinking through this. This is where I could spend the rest, and I will probably spend the rest of my life. Always really understanding these variables and the knobs and how they adjust and how they play on each other. It's really, really interesting. Anyways, so
So no, everyone shouldn't have narcissism, but if you identify that narcissism if narcissism is a trait that comes out in your activities, then you need to understand if it's a core trait or if it's something that you've learned.
Right,
And
because a
then-
lot of
and
it can
then
be
manage it.
conditioning.
Yeah, and then just learn how to manage it.
I don't know. Anyways, I'm super humble, so not even worried about any of that.
Type in what's the definition of humble?
There's not a picture of Abe next to it, that's for sure.
I would say humble probably falls into the same space as thought leadership.
What do you mean?
Well, you said you can't proclaim yourself thought leader.
Oh, I know. I hate that. It's so stupid.
Can't
Yeah,
remember.
I know.
Yeah.
That's the joke. Not proud or haughty, not arrogant or assertive, not different. Reflecting, expressing, or offered in a spirit of deference or submission. Ranking low in hierarchy. As a verb, it is to make someone humble, to destroy the power, independence, and prestige of. So not proud, not arrogant, reflecting, expressing, or offered in a spirit of deference or submission. So I look at that and I can see that as the same kind of thing. Like to a point, and then that's a good trait. And then to the other points, like this becomes really not something to be
To really go for it, yeah.
to go for. Like you're not proud of anything about who you are as a person or your group or
And
your
that's,
team, and you're constantly offering, like deferring and submitting to other person's wills. So that's almost
the
like maybe the
unbalance.
opposite. Again,
Yes.
we're talking about the unbalance, and I think
Yeah.
that's so crazy, right? I mean,
So
it's so
that's-
interesting conversation. It's so crazy. Like it's such an interesting conversation to learn about.
because I would totally say that like I personally, when I hear the definition of humble, I'm like, I don't identify with any of those.
Right.
But then at the same time, there's a lot of contextual situations that people meet me in, and they say, well, yeah, those traits actually do ascribe to Stephen. And I think one of the things a lot of people miss is that if you are in that reflexive state where you're like, getting feedback from people and like reading situations in rooms, you can actually weaponize being humble.
Humble brag.
Because,
It's a really good one.
well, actually,
Like
that
the word
would be
weaponize.
weaponizing for annoyance. But like you can actually exert more control over a situation if people think that you're the deferential one.
Yeah.
Because like
Because when you've got those people with kind of a savior complex, like, oh no, I need to.
so yeah,
let me
so you have,
just bring you along,
you
and
have
you're like,
your-
let
you
me just
have
ride this ride. It's like going on the lazy river at the.
you have your savior
somewhere.
complex, you have your unbalanced narcissist that's like, oh, you're humble and that means you're following me, which means I must be fantastic because the person wants to give me deference, and it's like, yeah, I'm giving you deference so that you will go in the direction I want you to move in. So like there's just multiple ways that can be used, and without understanding the core, you're in a position of like basically like you're missing half of the information that's coming.
So I think as you're saying that, and I'm like lighting up because I think it's so interesting that really I think in the next 5 or years or so I'm going to wind down whatever I'm doing and then just start focusing on studying these things, because I think this is like where I'm the most interested in how do you apply these things? How do you understand these concepts and apply them into an actual meeting? Apply them into dealing with 2, 5, 8 people into a business, right? These are all the different things that are coming in, and how do you just said, one of the things you can do with a narcissist is you can do in deference, act humble, and then almost because of that, because I guess you're not so direct with the person to cause a conflict,
Mhm.
that you can influence the direction in a way that you were actually wanting to go from the beginning, instead of walking in and saying, this is the way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a whole thing to just, and yeah, it's pretty cool. I love all this.
I mean, like if we're gonna go, look at the thing that has been, I guess, the most popular, most intriguing TV show that's happened up until this season, Tyrion Lannister with Game of Thrones is a perfect example of weaponized humility
I've never seen any of it.
without being someone that is humble in any way.
I agree.
His
Like
key
just from the
line-
little bit I've seen.
Yeah, his key line is "I drink and I know things." Right? That is not a humble statement whatsoever. But-
It's Steven.
But on the other side, you have,
Otherwise, I spit everywhere.
on the other side of that, he finds the person with the dragons, and he's like, cool, I will be your like right hand assistant. Like I will show deference because then in doing that, I can also help guide.
So beautiful. It's actually, I think, in the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, I think this is literally chapter 1. Don't outshine the master,
Right. Unless you are it.
unless you are. And then there's other rules. But in this case, I don't know what his role is. I don't know if he's a master or he's an assistant. I don't know what his role is, but it sounds like it's an interesting. I would love. Imagine we could do a pair up between that book and Game of Thrones, and a few of the psychological principle books like Robert
Oh,
Cialdini's
yeah.
influence, like those things that we talk about and we study, and then look at those books and then see like literally compare where the lessons are showing up and what was done differently.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'll spend the rest of my life on, I think. ultimately.
The other series that I don't know that you have read, but the Patrick Rothfuss series of the King Killer Chronicles. The King Killer Chronicles.
King Killer Chronicles. Okay.
So Quoth, however you say his name, the lead character, is like as brilliant, as powerful, as whatever as could be in compared to so many other people. Like his talents are so far off, but he balances this humility with this, I wouldn't even call it narcissism, but this knowledge of knowing where I am and this confidence. And the character's so intriguing because he's able to walk into any situation and just command that attention and that focus without, I mean, there is intimidation, but it's not that intimidation of a true narcissist who's just like,
Right, it's not overt.
It's
And
not
that's-
overt,
and
yeah.
That's really the whole like showing your hand before you're ready, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to walk in and be like, look, I'm the best thing that's ever happened. This is all my skill sets. I'm better than everybody else, because then you engender someone trying to knock you off that
exactly,
that platform.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
then you waste a bunch of effort trying to
To
defend.
humble you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to waste a bunch of effort defending something that like didn't even
Need to
really
be.
need to be
Yeah.
expressed,
100%.
Right.
right?
So beautiful.
Like, and then if you are trying to, if you're in the middle of getting something done, the last thing you want to do is then make it a conflict between you and whatever the asset, prospect, client, person of leadership in this space currently that you're trying to like work with, right? Like, we see that with the president all the time. Like, what's the easiest way to get kicked out of Trump's circle? Outshine Trump.
I was trying.
Like, that's just, it doesn't matter how effective you are, it doesn't matter what you're doing. The minute you cross that line with him,
Yeah,
You're
again,
done.
Robert, first rule in that Robert Greene's book.
right.
Don't
Yeah.
outshine the master.
And then, and I love the fact that like we've seen that in this particular setting, because then you can see it like how that reaction on the other side is unbalanced and is actually detrimental to the person that is reacting that way, right? Like, and that's something I would say most people in leadership positions should watch out for, is like, if you feel so threatened by someone else doing a good job, then you either need to get better at doing the job or realize that like that is reflective of the fact that you have enabled them to do that job. This is not a direct assault on you.
It's so funny you say that
Because
because
otherwise you just work with dumbasses.
it's so funny you say that because I heard exactly that line, but the good version of that line yesterday, as Brad was talking about Linear Labs,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about the fact that he's like, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I love that, and I have these world class people, and I'm so humbled to be able to work with these guys, and da 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 da. It's literally exactly what you were saying. The good way of it though, like
Right.
I'm so my job is to continually get people like that into the room and build that team, and you're absolutely right, because that's where. But it's this. It's,
And it doesn't mean that.
but it's related to self-confidence ultimately at some
Right.
point, right?
Right. Because it doesn't. People say like, "Oh, I'm not the smartest person in the room," and I've heard that used by people that legitimately like don't belong in the room. And I'm like, okay,
There goes
well,
Steven.
it's not so much about whether or not you're the smartest person in the room.
Or
It's
the
like,
right person. For the thing.
right, like what is the specific skill set, point of mastery that you bring to the table? Because that is the whole thing. Like if you're the best at everything, then it's like, okay, cool, we need to clone you 15 times. But that's the whole point.
God, you know how many times I've heard that? Okay,
Like
go.
most of the time, you want people that are good in specific veins.
Please no.
Jenny goes like, what? So this
That'd
is,
be like two of me. We don't need to clone me either.
so no, it'd be amazing. So imagine
Wait, what type of cloning are we talking about? We're talking about like cloning for spare parts, or we're talking about like legitimately having.
that's a whole different conversation. We should have all these
I would-
topics where we'll get into.
I think it'd
It'd
be
be awesome,
I
actually.
mean, so if you want to watch a very underrated Michael Bay movie,
Okay.
How many explosions are there?
one.
Oh my God!
There's,
Yes.
there's actually I would say
That's so
probably
funny.
20% of the explosions in most of his movies, because he actually cared about making the movie.
Oh.
It's called The Island.
Why do I know
So it's
that?
just like it's like a one-off
When did
like
that come
sci-fi
out? Why does
movie,
that
but it's
sound familiar?
about a society basically like I think you kick us forward 20 years where they do like the rich people can have clones of themselves created for spare parts, and they all live on this island and like
yeah.
they run around and like it basically is told from the perspective of a few clones, and then the clones figure out that like they are clones. And I feel like Ian McGregor.
Yeah,
was
Ian McGregor,
Oh, I
Scarlett
know him.
Johansson,
Yeah, this is
Michael
all,
Clark Duncan,
Yeah, this is all like way early.
That's
And
right. What year is that? movie?
2005.
yeah.
Huh. Okay.
But it's just, like, the reason I say, like, it's an underrated Michael Bay movie is because it has less explosions, and basically, like, they figure out that they're clones, they escape from the island, the facility, and then, or they escape from the facility and they find their original creators. Yeah. And I think,
Interesting.
I think at the end of the movie.
I think we need to have a movie night here at the Kinetic Experience.
It would take like a movie weekend to watch all the movies we
So
talk
we'll do is
about.
we'll
Yeah.
watch the movie here on my somewhere, and then we'll also be live, so whoever else wants to watch it at their house and we'll just chat with each
Oh,
other.
chat with each other.
And we have like 15-minute breaks where we actually can talk for 5 minutes, and then we go back into it.
We still have to host the Matrix.
What do you think about that? Yeah, I've been wanting to host the Matrix, so.
Yeah, okay, we're talking about just the first movie, right?
The first
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I just don't know what's the easiest way to do that.
Yeah.
From the, like, literally just from the sitting down, lighting, sound perspective, that's all.
Yeah.
Because we can always get, but getting 20 people in a comfortable space for 2 hours of sitting, it'd be really cool if we had a connection right here in one of the movie theaters that would allow us to kind of sneak in and plug up our laptop kind of thing. But, is anybody in Dallas, if you're watching?
So this ties back into our summer. This is what we can do in the summer. We could have summer
But it
movies.
is much easier to do that in a private setting than it is to do inside of a theater because they have to license things.
I know, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, so that's why it's like.
Because Angelica will let you do it.
You just don't look at what we're doing. We're just going to borrow your room for a little bit. We're going to do a corporate presentation of
That
the
seems
Matrix.
ethical.
It's really, literally is a corporate presentation because there's a lot. We're not here to watch the movie per se as much as talk about what's all going on in it. I'm trying to sell it, guys. I'm trying to sell fucking work with me, God. What the hell are y'all doing? Why would you work against the vision?
I'm
No,
not
we're
saying
not trying to work
anything.
against the vision.
Jeez.
We're just trying to make sure that, like, when
I don't
this-
end up in jail.
Yeah, so when this is admissible in court, all of us said, I object.
So funny.
Yeah.
It's good.
Run that past Brian first.
Yeah.
No, I understand. They have their own rules, but we could do it here, and we're not charging for it, so that's another thing, by the way.
Right.
Not charging for it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tying back to the topic,
Well, this is such a broad topic, like
but
learning.
I was just gonna say this. This is what like the watching the movies, sharing our experiences within them, looking into books that have the characteristics that we're talking about. That's all self-directed learning. That's all learning. Emily and I yesterday got up. Well, okay, I got us up on a tangent
Please,
of palm reading. So Scarlett.
I got a lot of work done while going like this.
Like,
So Scarlett asked a question like how many, well, Lifeline, which
one of your specific jobs is to keep us, especially.
We had already
Us.
established we needed to bring in Peggy to
Yes.
complete our meeting, so then I did other stuff.
and I did other stuff, and then I
Jenny
remembered the
sat there looking
question.
like she was tripping her balls off, like going like this constantly. So I can't even imagine what the people walking around here were thinking.
So we're watching videos, and it's like, okay, look at this, and so I'm doing this, and like this, and then I look over what Emily's doing, and then she says this, and people are walking by. It's like, oh, yeah, we look like, who
Is
knows?
that now streamed?
I'm pretty sure I said, damn it,
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't done that.
That would have been awesome.
But I learned a lot,
Look
and
at-
it was totally a self-directed learning, like deep
Black
dive into it.
I guess that's an expectation. Like, so you want to always foster that level of curiosity, but
Yeah.
at what point you're like, hey, I need to put a pin in this,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
and
let's
to
talk
not
Jannica
feel
and ask
like
her about
you're.
What time did I put a pin in it?
that one. No,
It's still
generally.
rolling
When
through
is
my
the time
head.
When you're like, add that to the bucket of I need to learn, I want to learn, and then get back to
I think it's when you ask yourself that question.
which one?
Do I need to stop doing this? Did I go
My
down
dear,
the
but
rabbit
you
hole?
ask that question 4 hours into it sometimes.
No, usually it's.
You're like, Jannica, what happened? It's Monday, and you said you'd get this to me Monday morning. You're like, yeah, but I got really interested in the Krebs cycle inside of photosynthesis. I'm like, why? Like, why? Why was this the thing? Well, Issa asked me
I
like
saw a plant,
I saw a
and
plant,
then,
and then-
there I was, 4 hours later.
16 hours later, 48 YouTube videos.
This is why I
Could
don't
you ask this
work in a
question
9 to
sooner?
5 job anymore
You're
because
about
it
to not work in a
sucks.
job.
Whatever.
Anyway.
No, usually it's like 10 to 15 minutes. I'll start asking myself that question. Do I need to do this? Can I
Right.
do this later? And then I'm like, yeah, a little bit longer. And then I do. I start checking in with myself.
So here's have you guys ever experienced this where you come across something new, you start exploring it, and then someone says, why do you always have to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I want to smack them.
I was just wondering if I was the only one that ever experienced that.
Well, I think what's interesting, and I think it's there's certain individuals that are really good about this, and and all joking aside, like I think especially if we were in a larger company, I would be seeking those kind of people out because they go out and bring in all this data, and they can come and connect really really broad dots together that I don't think I could have, or we could have inherently. We're only focused in this one particular
Right.
direction. And if you look at all the really amazing products, well, I mean, if you look at even in the original iPod, like it's a lot of different things that were coming together,
It's
and it
quite a
wasn't
lot.
just that it was revolutionary in and of itself because of what it was bringing to the marketplace. It was also how it was being brought to the marketplace, what it looked and felt like, which is design. Your standard engineer would be like, but it works.
It'll look like this.
Yeah, it was like, hey man, like this thing works. It's got the
Actually,
button
like,
on
hey,
it.
here's mine.
And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't fit the aesthetic.
It doesn't feel nice.
And-
It
and
doesn't fit
because their
nicely
data
with
points are
things.
not around, the aesthetic. It's around functionality. It's around the tech specs. And then
Yeah.
for a design person, it is. So it's all of these dots that are having to get connected. And it's particular in the story of Steve Jobs. He had an opportunity to do that because of his background and how he went through school and how he quit school and how he took a calligraphy class and a design class. And anyways, all those things. So I think I would be seeking those kind of people out.
In that type of context, in a company context, that actually, yes, that's very beneficial. My original question was more on the personal level, because that tends to be, I not tend to hear that, I don't hear it now, but I think that's more because I've kind of like curated.
Flush those people out.
Yeah, but like that was something like, at the prime of when we were supposed to be doing that in college, that was something that I've heard all the time. Like, why is everything got to be more complicated than it actually is? Like, it's an iPod, big deal. Like, what are the other implications need to be that broke up with a girlfriend because she hated listening to NPR?
Hey, you don't listen to NPR, you can get out.
You don't need that kind of
it's not
negativity in your life.
You're right, and it's not you have to do this, but like this is what I enjoy.
Right.
And so like these are also what informs my conversations and everything else. So like I
No,
don't
I
know
totally
if we
understand.
have anything in common if like what I want to learn about the world is completely irrelevant to you.
I totally understand. Well, I think that's you being set in yourself and what you want to do and what you're excited to do and what you're not excited to do, and just nothing to do on that one.
So how do you think Leonardo da Vinci did it? Do you think that he found something interesting and then looked at his schedule and was like, oh shit, I can't keep studying this. I have to
Leonardo
go
da Vinci
do.
is exactly the best and wrong person to bring up in this
I know,
case.
that's why I brought him up.
Okay.
So
Why?
thanks to the way he was for us.
Right, but
No.
you said the best part, which I think most people have like explored the best part. Why was he the wrong person for?
Because he had a really hard time doing what he was supposed to do and got paid to do.
And he would walk away from things when they bored him.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the adoration of the Magi, which is I think is one of his first, if not the first, real major commissions for him, is unfinished.
Right.
What's so amazing about it is how he drew the people and the perspectives and the lines, but it's an unfinished painting because he's like, yeah, fuck this, I'm done.
Yeah.
And so that curiosity was great for us because we can look and see all the things that he touched on and researched and learned in his notebooks.
Right.
Really, right? But if we didn't have these notebooks,
Right. If we only looked at the output, it would all be
I
potential.
don't think we wouldn't
Right.
know how amazing he was if it wasn't for his notebooks. Because you're like, the dude did like 15 paintings over the course of like 40 years, 50 years.
Which for like a artist
Yeah.
is really not a lot.
No, it's
No,
He
nothing.
worked a lot and
That's not even one every couple of years.
No,
Yeah, it's like
not
one
at all.
barely more than two a decade.
he did
Yeah.
the theatrical backgrounds and things like that, which all of those, that was fun for him because he got to work with levers and all this stuff. But guess what? Those all
And
died.
it's temporary.
Yeah,
they all,
and
like-
quick in and out.
They got destroyed.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. And so there was all of these different things that were happening. So that's what I mean. Like for us, it was great that he was all over the place and documented it. But for himself, I know he enjoyed it, but he also had difficulty. I mean, he had people that would give him weird contracts. There was a story about for St. Jerome in the Wilderness, I believe. I think it's that one. But they had this like really weird contract because they were like trying to goad him to actually like do the work this time. Because like, we know you, man, you're super talented, but we won't pay you until you do this. And if we do that, then you get some wine. And I mean, like,
Right.
Yeah.
and you look at who he is now, and you're like, what the fuck, man? Like, if you would have been
And
just
thinking about
15% a little bit more focused, or had the self-discipline to stay on task.
And I think, and that kind of leads back to the question of how to maintain self-discipline of like, these are things I need to do these things to make sure I'm not letting commitments down or not getting
Right.
paid or whatever. So how to temper curiosity with self-discipline and not really overwhelm either one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's the balance.
So that's
Yeah.
and that's not really inherently a skill, because you see people who are on the spectrum or ADD or whatever. Like, oh, those people just can't focus. Like, no, people who are hyperactive and ADD, sometimes the problem is that they focus so deeply into something else that they're not able to then redirect their brain to something else. So is there anything
Hyperfocus is-
wrong with them? No, it's just
That's the way they're wired.
Hyperfocus is a
Form of ADHD. It's one of the 7 types if you listen to Dr. Ahmed.
yeah.
So
That's
there's,
interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah,
Hyperfocus.
What are
hyperfocus
the
ADHD.
other types?
So there is the ring of fire, which is the one where their brain literally, when it's on a scan, is all lit.
Oh,
And it looks like the ring of fire, and that would be scarlet.
right. There's just so much input
Too
that's
much
coming
stuff
in.
is going in at one time for any of it to really.
Then you have the one that is the general normal, which is just they can't focus for very long. They're moving, they're fidgety, whatever. I don't remember them all. There's the one that's the temporal lobe, right? The front one, which is more, those typically are from a trauma, frontal lobe trauma of some sort. And so there's more anger outbursts. There's less control,
Yeah.
less impulse control, that sort of thing. Yeah, you can look, I've read a couple of the books. They're fascinating because you can really then see, and it's such a different, some of them are just diet, some of them are sleep, some of them are real therapy, like the one that's a frontal lobe is a definite therapy and occupational therapy and stuff. Some of them really respond to medication, others don't, and it
Right.
just makes them worse.
Right.
So it's understanding all that.
That's
But that
throwing
hyper-focus is a true
Adderall
one.
at everybody was clearly not a fix.
Yeah,
Never.
you add Adderall to someone who has hyperfocus ADHD,
You just get more intense focus.
yeah, it does not help them. Yeah. And so then they're like, oh, well, let's add this med, but yeah, whatever. I could go on a rabbit hole on
I
that.
know that one for sure. You add Adderall to the hyperfocus aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and then you
Don't see them for 4 days.
yeah,
Pretty much.
and then you'll be like, okay, well, what did you do? And they're like, I did this thing, and I was doing this thing this entire time, and I don't need nothing else mattered
Yeah.
around this thing.
That's crazy.
Look, I brushed
So-
all of the fibers in my carpet all weekend.
Can't
Yeah.
wait for that person to show up at my house. So on that note, we're gonna focus on staying on task and on schedule. I think
Yeah.
today we started late.
No, we're not doing that.
Why
Yeah,
would
we
we
are.
do that?
Yeah, we need to. Today we should-
By the way, I'm
should
getting
go-
messages that my light is really dark and I look like I'm in the shadow, just so you know.
Okay, well, we're gonna have to play around with the lights. So
Yeah, it was really overcast when we got in here. And
I think what I love to do is explore some of these, like some of the topics that came in here could be their own shows, and I think I'd love to explore that.
Yeah.
And I'd love to discuss the definition of success, because when we think through, we're talking about Da Vinci, well, he was obviously a success. I don't know if he thought he was a success in his own life, so I think that's an interesting conversation. And, and everybody has a different measure of success. And, just because someone is not thriving financially doesn't mean that they're a complete failure. And I think right now, sometimes that's considered, some people look at that,
Mm-hmm.
and so of course you have to have financial wealth to live the life you're wanting to live, and I think
Yeah.
but beyond that, it's arbitrary, I think, because then you could be like, well, yeah, that person is super super rich, but their body is failing, or so that goes back to the wealth wheel. So
Yeah.
anyways, thank you for everybody who tuned in, for the questions that came through. Check us out on our website, thekineticexperience.com. We also have the Da Vinci show that we talked about, which we push all those things, all that content to Instagram, which is called, our tag there is Becoming Da Vinci, and also on YouTube, which we have we have the channel there. Our website that shows all of this is the becomingdavincishow.com. Thank you so much. We'll be getting off your ears now and returning soon.
some combination of us will be here tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm Abe Nadimi.
Jannica Morton.
Emily Francis.
Steven Ellis.
Oh, he's there. The mystery man's here. All right, bye.
Bye. Okay.